Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, so that must mean it's the Parish Coffee Hour with Father Paul and friends. And we want to get it started right off the bat, so I'm going to turn it over to our host, Father Paul Prabel.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you today. This is quite a week for us here at the Cathedral. We're celebrating the confirmation of our school students who are in the 8th grade from our school and also from CCD. And in these COVID days, instead of one big ceremony, we've got four. And we're just grateful for the goodness and the wisdom of Bishop John as he's with us for all of these. And they're just going great. So the Holy Spirit's sort of all around us in wonderful ways. Today, our guest is Father Larry Hehman. It's many of you know our hall is Hehman Hall, and at Striking, we're getting into a season where we're going to be doing some fixing of it up a bit also, and part of our capital campaign has been to rehab it a bit. We're not here to talk about a hall, though. We're here to talk about a good man and his priesthood, and he's been around the city a long time and has ministered to many people in our community. So, Larry, we're glad you're with us today, and of course we got a history together, and that's going to make, I think, this even a better program. But let's just start it off. How long you been a priest, and how long have you been retired in the midst of those years, Larry?
Well, you said a good man, and my father said, there's two kinds of good. He says there's good for nothing and no good at all. So I hope that maybe I'm okay. Now, what was the question? The question was, how long have I been a priest? Well, 56 years, and been retired 16 years plus.
All right.
And happily retired.
Well, and doing great work, and we'll talk about that as we go along. Let's go back though, and again, it's shaking it up a little bit upstairs. But can you describe how and when you felt called to be a priest?
Oh, that's sort of a long story, but I'll try. You got to stop me if I go too long on some of this stuff. When I was in high school, or even early in high school, my family sort of wanted me to be a priest. I had two brothers and two sisters. I'm the second youngest, and my sister Nance is a nun. She's the youngest. She's a Notre Dame nun. And a lot of people said, Larry, you ought to be a priest. Well, I didn't like that idea at all. And my brother Paul didn't become a priest. My older brother Dick didn't become a priest. And why in the heck should Larry become a priest? So my reaction to that was over my dead body. I was interested in becoming a chemist, like the Pope, but like a chemist. But because I fooled with chemistry sets and made stink bombs and bombs and all kinds of stuff, big time as a kid. And so I signed up at Thomas More College, or Villa Madonna then, to take chemistry. But toward the end of the summer, right before Thomas More opened, I got this idea that maybe Jesus is calling me to be a priest. Sort of frightened me. And so, but I thought, oh God, I can't get it out of my mind. And I wanted to do something with my life, being a chemist. And I always dreamt to help bunches of people, but through chemistry. I also thought of dentistry, and I thought of being a surgeon and stuff, but chemistry was the big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to Saturday afternoon confession to the associate pastor at St. Therese in Southgate, and went to confession. And this guy was a young, dynamic guy. He was a semi-pro baseball player, which we all liked. He was a heck of a baseball player. And I said, I think, Father, that maybe Jesus might be calling me to be a priest. And he says, now look, I want to tell you two things. One is, we priests are happy men. We're happy that Jesus called us. And then we talked and so forth. And he says, but now, if you're really thinking of this seriously, I got to talk to you out of the confessional and so forth. Well, we did out of the confessional talk. He introduced, I had to talk to my father about this. I had to talk to the pastor, Father Brinker, about this. And in 2 weeks, I was off to the seminary and didn't go to Thomas More. And I just packed a regular suitcase, and then they set me up a footlocker, my folks. And I went to La Crosse, Wisconsin. Well, all of the guys from Newport Catholic and the other guys from Covington, they went to St. Mars in Kentucky, to St. Mary's at St. Mars. And so I went to a seminary. There was only one other person who was in philosophy from the Diocese of Covington. And so I just whisked off in the Burlington Zephyr from Chicago to La Crosse, Wisconsin, and spent 2 years, my first 2 years there, taking special Latin. So I only had 2 years of high school Latin. And this is one of the reasons why many of the priests or seminarians from Covington went to St. Mary's, Kentucky. But it was filled. And so I just went off sort of by myself for 2 years at La Crosse, Wisconsin. And then we stayed there, and in the Diocese of Covington, they were building a new seminary. And so they wanted to get all the seminaries together. So they took everybody out of St. Mary's in Kentucky. They took me out of La Crosse, Wisconsin. And we were sent to get back into, we were sent to St. Paul, Minnesota for our 1 year of philosophy. And then after that first year of philosophy, they brought us all back to the new seminary, St. Pius X. And there were 18 of us who graduated, the first graduating class from the new building at St. Pius X. So that's my start. Over my dead body. And then somehow, some way, in a week and a half or so, I was on the Burlington Zephyr out of Chicago, heading for La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Yeah, things have a way of happening. And for our viewers, Larry and I are from the same area. We're from northern Kentucky, from Campbell County, in fact, and separated by 7 years, we went to the same high school. So he lived in Southgate, which is kind of between Fort Thomas.
Fort Thomas. I lived in the slums of Fort Thomas.
There you go.
Not Southgate. I went to church in Southgate and school.
All right. Well, I lived in Bellevue, which was, in the shadows of Newport in the wild and woolly days. And of course, Larry was part of forging all that. So anyway, from there you went, you studied in Innsbruck, is that correct? From
Yes.
St. Pius?
Yeah, they took 6 of the 18 in our class, and they sent 2 to Rome, 2 to Innsbruck, Austria, where I went, and 2 to Louvain.
And that's something though, back in those days, 18 guys in the seminary in the same class. So again, those were the days.
I don't know if they sent the ones to get rid of or the smartest, but let me tell you that little story. I was slated to go to Rome, and they took the 2 brightest, smartest in our class, and they were going to send them to Innsbruck. It wasn't me. And then we're 2 going to be sent to Louvain. And so happened that one of the 2 that they were sent into Innsbruck couldn't go because of family problems. And I then was switched from Rome, the highly wonderful place where you might become a bishop, to go to Innsbruck, Austria, which was wild, liberal, great education, but I could have had a wild, conservative last 4 years in the seminary, as opposed to a wild liberal. That was one of the greatest graces of God, that I went to Innsbruck instead of Rome.
Let's kind of wrap up a little reflection on your seminary formation, and realizing that was kind of around the time of the Second Vatican Council also. So
exactly. 61.
What was most helpful for you over those 8 years or so in your seminary formation? I know it's a big question, but maybe if you could just pull one or two things together, that'd be great.
The most helpful was that I was free to do what I wanted and to think what I wished. And you're not as free, or at that time, in the American seminaries. They were much more stern, strict. You had to do this, 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 this. We didn't have to go to class, but we went to class if we wanted to go to class. We had to take oral examinations in Latin or Greek, or Latin or German, but or English, mostly in English, really. But as far as the freedom was so free that you could get yourself in deep trouble, but you really had to think for yourself, do I really want to do this? And it really wasn't until I was in my end of my 6th year in the seminary and going into the 7th year, and you go 8, that I really decided to be a priest. And it was the hardest thing in the world, because I went over to Innsbruck, Austria, to be a priest, to be a great Catholic, to be a great Christian, and to be a wonderful human. In that order. I had to take, and I had a big, big, big crisis of faith, whether I almost jumped into the Inn River, but I had a crisis of faith where I had to totally reverse that order. And I did that in the 6th, 7th year over there, where I decided, if I'm going to be a priest, can I be a good human? Do I really believe in God? Do I really believe in Jesus Christ and Christianity? Do I really believe in Roman Catholicism? And then, do I want to be a priest? And it was only going in the 7th year did I decide that I wanted to be a priest. That was the biggest choice of my life that I did in freedom.
Yeah.
And it was, and so I felt like I'll never have a year like that until somebody tells me I have cancer and I'm going to die in a year. That's how wild it was for me.
Sure, I understand. And that's probably more common than not, and it's helpful for our audience to reflect on that too. It isn't just like you say yes and then it's all like a downhill run. There's lots of bumps.
Well, they do marriage in 2 years, getting ready to say, will you marry me? I did 6.5 years.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, now you became a priest. So, you're a priest for the Diocese of Covington for Northern Kentucky, Central Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, but your first assignment was up in Northern Kentucky, right?
Right.
What can you say about that one?
First two is 1965, came back. I was ordained April 3rd, came back in the summer. And then in July, August, I was assigned to St. Agnes in Kenton County, not Campbell County, where you and I grew up, but it's just a few miles across the Licking River up there. And
St. Agnes is where the Quonset hut came from. That was our first church here.
Exactly. But it's not where the meanest pastor in the diocese was. That was Charles Ambrose Tao. And I was just a new baby priest. But there were 5 priests. He was the pastor. And then there was one who taught at the college, Thomas More College. And then there were 3 associates. And I was a part-time associate at St. Agnes and a part-time teacher at the Latin school. But he was the terror of the diocese. And I stayed there for 4 years. But I taught at the Latin school, the Covington Latin School. Taught Dan Knoll, Greg Schuler, John List, and many other priests that a lot of people know. And it's a priest haven, or a priest. Most of us came from Northern Kentucky. It's not so true anymore, but that's the way it was then. And so, and many of the priests on the faculty of Covington Latin School were there for 10 to 20 years. Well, after 2 years, I said, I don't want to do teaching these little kids. These kids were 2 years younger, graduated from high school, than normal kids, like Dan Knoll graduated when he was 16 years old from high school. And I don't want to do this. I want to get some young adults or something. And that's why I got out of Northern Kentucky through the friendship with Father Elmer Moore and came to be a priest at the Newman Center here in Lexington, Kentucky. Great move.
Yeah. Well, how did Father Elmer, affect your priesthood in your life, working with him?
Well, in our family life with 5 kids and a sick mother who died when I was in the 8th grade of cancer, many of the priests from the parish came to our house because of this sickness. And we were close to the church too. And we admired priests. And we saw Father Wethington, for example. He was one of the associates there. And they would come to the house and we would befriend them, and they loved us. They loved the kids. And they really loved my dad. These priests, I would say at least 3 of them, Father Moore is one, at least 3 of them talked heart to heart with my dad, like a counselor. Or he wasn't a counselor, but as a friend with the deep stuff was going on in their life.
Yeah.
And so I loved these priests, and I thought they really help people. And I was dreaming in my life, I want to help a lot of people. And it's sort of that what I saw, what they were doing, what sort of changed my heart.
So, of course.
Now, what was the question?
Yeah. Tell us about working with Father Moore and what you learned from him, whether by teaching or just.
Well, Elmer Moore was a great preacher. He loved to party. He was an interesting personality. He could joke around. He could be serious, and he demanded to be independent. He too studied in Europe. He studied in Fribourg, in der Schweiz, in Switzerland. And so we had a lot of common, and, we could talk intelligently, intellectually, about priesthood and stuff. And so I got to know him because he came over the family. He taught at Thomas More College up there, and he taught my brother Dick. My brother Dick was on the basketball team, and Dick introduced me to Father Moore, and Moore would come over the house, and I went on vacation with Father Moore. So that's how I got interested in the relationship with Moore before I ever came to Lexington. And it was because I wanted to work with young adults more so than young kids that I said, Father Moore, do you think I could come to the UK or come to the Newman Center? Oh, I'd be delighted. And so we tried to get it, and they wouldn't let me out from Northern Kentucky so the only way I could get out from Northern Kentucky was they said, you can go to Father Moore's if you teach at Lexington Catholic High School. And so I agreed to teach at Lexington Catholic High School. And Elmer says, don't worry, we'll get you out of that. And so I taught at Lexington Catholic High School for the first semester in 1969. And then after Christmas, I was finished with Lexington Catholic High School because I was back in high school again. I was the head of the religion department at Lexington Catholic High School. And so I went then full time at the Newman Center because I never really decided to go back to high school. I only used it to get my nose into the Newman Center.
Right.
And so that friendship, I stayed with Elmer Moore, under Elmer Moore as the associate or as the chaplain with him until he left. And that was, I don't know what year it was, but it was like 10, 12 years. I thought he was never going to leave. So I decided, well, then I'm going to leave. I decided to go back to Northern Kentucky and get a parish where it'd be small and where I could know the number of people or know the names of people, and it'd be small because I went from St. Agnes, which was really a big parish in Northern Kentucky, to I went to another one for a year, St. Augustine, downtown Covington. And then Newman Center was a big, big parish. And so I went to small parish. So I asked the personnel board, like, you and I were the head of the personnel board. You know, could I go to Northern Kentucky? And you all said yes. And so you sent in my name to go to a parish in Kenton County, which it was all a go until I got a call from Bishop Hughes saying, Larry, how would you like to come up for a couple scotches and a drink on Friday night for dinner? And then he said, Larry, Christ the King needs a guy like you. Will you go and stay in Lexington and be a priest of Christ the King? And I already turned it down because it was open. But for Bishop Hughes, I'd do anything. And this is the first time I ever did something I didn't want to do. And I went to Christ the King.
Let's back up just a little bit, Larry. It was 69 that you came to the UK's Newman Center, and in 78, so you were like the associate there with Father Moore for a long time, and then 78 he left.
Yes,
and,
he went St. Paul's.
I came there in 77, and we were 1 year together as associate pastors, and then.
Oh yeah, you were the best associate I've ever had.
Well, at least the best one named Paul Prabel. But anyway, anyway, it was 78 you became pastor there, and just a quick vignette or so. What's your most positive memory or most joyful aspect of serving with the college students and the university community for all those years? Because it was quite a long run,
Well, these were the youth from Kentucky. They weren't just our Covington Diocese or just Lexington and so forth. These were people from a lot from Louisville and all over, and from Eastern Kentucky. And they came to the Newman Center, and it was a joy for me to try to keep up with Elmer Moore, the great preacher and sort of the kingpin at the Newman Center, and then do my thing in my way with the kids, these young men and these young women. And it was all right after Vatican II was really kicking in, and Elmer Moore and the parish in the diocese was very much trying to do the same thing. And we had a lot of programs about that, and a lot of social life with the students. Like with that, there was a great faculty involved at the Newman Center, and it was a sort of a smart, rational, intellectual, fun, living out Roman Catholicism and the priesthood for me at the Newman Center. So I thought I'd never, ever get a place like the Newman Center after I finally left after 17 and a half years. Mm-hmm. Elmer Moore beat me by a half a year. He was there 18 years. But anywho, but I thought I'd never get a great assignment like the Newman Center. And you know what? I felt like Christ the King was a heck of a great assignment. Yeah. Because that place was hurting with all kinds of internal problems when I got there. And that's sort of one of the reasons why the bishop said, they need a person like you, which I said, yes, Bishop. Yes, Bishop. And it was
roughly around 1986, somewhere around there when you came to Christ the King. So yeah, let's talk about that, about being at Christ the King.
Well, when I moved into Christ the King, my sister Nance the nun helped me move in, okay? And when she walked through the building at Christ the King, when we were just taking my furniture upstairs or downstairs, something downstairs. But anyway, she said, Larry, I could never belong to this church. She says, this is the biggest, the coldest, the most impersonal thing I could think I could ever do to get it being associated with this church. And I sort of thought the same thing. But it didn't take long to realize that these people are people. They're intelligent people. They're wealthy people. They're poor people. They're really good people. Yeah. And in the first year, after the first year, when we had our first pictorial directory, I wrote an article. You know how the pastor, you did the same thing, Paul, a couple of times. As far as I wrote the opening article in the pictorial directory, a sleeping giant.
Yeah.
And I always felt like Christ the King was a sleeping giant. And that giant came alive because of them. They were, if you let them do stuff and pat them on the back, they love it. I mean,
Yeah.
you can have the best parish council, you can have the best financial council, you can have the best social life. I thought what they needed the most is have a social life where people can come together and bump into one another besides going to church.
Community, yeah.
That was the birth of the Oktoberfest.
Sure. Well, now, when Bishop Hughes talked to you, he probably didn't say, and by the way, Larry, it's going to become a cathedral.
No,
So,
he sure didn't.
So in your time frame, it became not only a cathedral, but Lexington became a diocese. So, what was that like for you to navigate that transition?
Well, let's just talk about when we started out at St. Agnes with the worst pastor in the world. Okay. At becoming a rector, I personally felt I was demoted, and almost everybody else thought I was promoted because I was the rector of the cathedral. Oh, who cares? I like to have freedom and do my own thing. And it so happened that the longer I was there 8.5 years, the longer I went into that, the more we would bump into the diocese and Bishop Kendrick Williams and what the diocese needed to do and what the diocese would tell me what to do. Well, I was a pastor. Now I got demoted to be the rector. And so we had a big problem with Kendrick and myself. And it was not fun in the beginning. I can tell the story because it really all worked itself out unbelievably well, because I stood up to him. He stood up to me. He invited me over he had a few Manhattans and I had a few scotches. And we sat down and we talked about what the real problem was. And we adjusted to one another, and we have become personal friends ever since. I mean, he doesn't anymore, but he would come over here since he retired. I'd go to his house with another nun, Sister Liz, and myself. We had dinner, we would talk, and he would come here. And especially on Holy Saturday night after he retired, he had no place to do Holy Saturday night. He would always come over and we would do the Holy Saturday night liturgy until a couple years ago. But it wound up to be starting out bad, and it really wound up to be really good with the people. I didn't have any problem with the people, but the people had problems. And I didn't have any problem with Kendrick Williams, but then I did have problems with Kendrick Williams. But it all worked out because I believe that dialogue is redemptive. And if you could talk to the other person, and he was open to doing that. And I think
it's being open so you can listen in return, say what's on your mind and in your heart, but also hear the other person and adjust. Yeah.
So I found it to be really a great parish to be pastor of and rector of, and even with working with the bishop.
Yeah.
So I had a great experience there.
Yeah, sort of the definition of rector. It's, I guess, from a Latin idea like right-hand man to the bishop, and again,
I didn't feel that way.
They give us a lot of space, and then we just operate and realize whenever we need to check, we do.
That's right. That's right. It works out. It works out if you're ready to work it out, both. And he was.
Some of our listeners and viewers want to hear the story of Hehman Hall, I'm sure.
Oh.
What can you say about Hehman Hall?
I didn't want to build it. I didn't want to build a gymnasium. I wanted to have an endowment. I wanted to raise money for an endowment. I wanted $10 million for an endowment. I didn't want $5 million for a Hehman Hall, a gymnasium, and stuff. And they wanted a gymnasium, the people, especially the school. Well, I don't build gyms. I raise money. I have raised a lot of money, but as far as I don't just raise money for gymnasiums. So we had a little battle on that too, or dialogue, maybe I should say, a little dialogue on that.
Spirit of conversation.
That's right. And so they said we want a gymnasium, and I said I want a endowment, and I want a meeting hall at Pax Christi. And we got together and we talked it on the financial council. We talked about on the parish council. We talked with the parishioners, and we said, if we do all three, I'm gung ho. Financial council, if we do all three, are you a gung ho? And with the gymnasium and the jocks, if we do all three, are you a gung ho? And all the people, the ones on the council, signed off. We're going to do all three, and we did all three, and it worked unbelievably well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a great space.
Yeah, I mean, it works. It works.
Mhm.
It works. But I mean, there's more headaches, as you might know. Thank God for when I hired Josette. She was super duper, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to have it's complicated. It gets bigger. Got bigger.
When after those years at Christ the King, then you went to Pax Christi.
Yeah.
And you know, it was to develop a parish. So what was that like, you know, to develop it, to move from the temporary church to build a new church? All that.
Let me tell you how I was squeezed myself out of Christ the King. I was in my 8th year, and I was getting burnt out of administration at Christ the King. And I was burnt out with big parishes and big deal this, big deal that. I wanted a small place. I wanted someplace, and I was too old to say I'm going to get a real small place and go to the mountains. I have never been to the mountains in my ministry. I dealt with intelligent kids at Latin school. I dealt with parishioners at Pax Christi and young people at the Newman Center. But I was getting burnt out, and the diocese was looking at land and then looking for a pastor. And so seriously, I took a sabbatical. I went out to Menlo Park in California for 3 months. And before I went, I made an appointment with my friend, Bishop Kendrick Williams, and I told him I'd like to be the first pastor, or volunteer to be the first pastor at the new church. And I went on sabbatical. And halfway through my sabbatical in March, I got a call from Kendrick Williams asking me to be the pastor of the new place, where you start with these. This is going to be an area in between Tate's Creek, or Harrodsburg Road and Tate's Creek, and south of that, you know, south of the circle or the whatever. And that's all you have. And now, Paul, I must go to confession. I stole things from Christ the King for the new parish.
We all know that.
Oh. You like censers and the tabernacles and candlesticks and vestments and stuff like that. Some of them I gave back. Some of them I'm sure you, under Greg Schuler, gave me. In fact, he gave me one very nice vestment. I bought these vestments that Pope J. Putu bought from Holland. And Greg was wearing all these vestments people made for him. And one night I went over there on Holy Saturday night for dinner and so forth, and we were talking, and I said, you don't even use the good vestments. I says, there's a nice one down there. It's gorgeous. You know, there's a whole set of them. There were $1,800 a vestment. Somebody gave me money to get new vestments. Well, take it. So I went down there and I took that vestment. And right now it's being used in Pax Christi. So it was, what was the question now, Paul?
Well, you're there. We're talking about your years at Pax Christi, and where did you first have church? What kind of
Well, we started
Pizza
out,
Hut, or what was it?
we started out at the YMCA at the ice stadium,
Okay.
Yellowstone. And when then we did a weekday little masses down in Nicholasville at the McDonald's office in Nicholasville.
Hmm.
And then I got a find where the roller rink was in operation, and I got that place on Sunday. And so, because they didn't open until 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And this generous person let us use that roller rink, and not the roller rink, but it wound up to be now the bingo hall. And so we would get a sleeve that just went right over the bingo table with all the ping pong balls with numbers on them, the bingo numbers, B1 and so forth. And up above it was the great lights or whatever, which the numbers that they called. It had a great sound system. It had chairs and tables. So we had to take all those away on Sunday and put in all the chairs in the farm, and had a stage or a podium up there for the mass, to celebrate the mass. And for a few years, we just did that until we said it's time to move out.
I'm wondering if you had the songs, the hymns for Mass on the other side of the bingo cards.
We did. No. We had them where you'd put the ping pong ball in the table, and then it would light up a big marquee up above, like B13. And so we wouldn't do the B's, but we'd just use the numbers. So we were limited to hymns in our missalette and like under 100, but we would stick them down in there, and we had a Ford. We had more than that. They were raffling off one time a motorcycle, and to the right side of the altar was a Harley Davidson motorcycle that they were raffling off. So the kids loved that a lot. That was that was cool.
Well, what was it like to facilitate the building of the church at Pax Christi?
Well, the deal is the diocese buys the land. So they bought 10 acres, the Fritz Farm, of 10 acres Fritz Farm, and they gave that to the parish. Now I was in charge of the rest. I was in charge of stealing from Christ the King, but raising the money for the new place and paying. Oh, I didn't totally pay the bills, but most of them. But so you started with nothing, but as nothing, and you just dealt with, for example, we didn't have a parish council. We had a town hall meeting for our parish council. We'd have 50, 60 people once a month, and they were there, 50 or 60 people. It was nice because we only had 100 or 200 people, but 50 or 60 would be there, and you would have the people just raising their hand. Yeah. For example, I remember one Sunday, some lady raised her hand and said, "Father, could I make a suggestion?" I said, "Sure. What's your suggestion?" "I suggest we do not build a church. We build a Catholic grade school, and then we will build a church, maybe. And then we'll build a gym, and then maybe we'll build a church." I says, "I think that's a wonderful suggestion. I would suggest that you go over and make an appointment with Bishop Kendrick Williams and tell him that, because he sent me over here to build a church." I never saw that lady again.
Well, as we're looking at ministry, you've been in two places. You've been 3 parishes in Lexington, 2 of them without a school, 1 of them with a school. What are the pluses and minuses in terms of, priestly ministry and, living and all when there's that, when they're present, when they're not present?
Well, I think it's a two-way. It's a blessing in both cases. I think it's a blessing if you have a parish with a school, because it puts a whole new dynamic in it, bringing the people to the parish and so forth. I find it to be easier, believe it or not, to have a parish without a school than to have a parish with a school. But a parish with a school draws people around the altar and into your lifestyle with families and so forth much easier than just having not a grade school. You have to usually make more of an emphasis on the CCD program or the religious education for the youth. But it also, I think it broadens that everybody is sort of equally important in the parish. Sometimes with the school wags the church, which I think when you don't have a school, the dog has many tails, and it doesn't wag the dog. You know?
Yeah, when you speak of the sleeping giant that Christ the King had been, it's also not only a sleeping giant at times, but it's a three-headed giant.
That's right.
One head that's the cathedral, one head that's the parish, and one head that's the school, and it all has to work together to help that giant.
And you can develop more problems with Christ the King than any other parish in our diocese. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, there's that, and also more joys. You know, that's
well. I know. That's what I'm saying. It's a two-headed it's a blessing on both sides. Bless.
Well, let's wrap up your active career as serving as a priest in parishes and move to your active career being retired. What's retirement been like for you? You know, all the
I would say wonderful. I would say wonderful, and in a sense, I feel like sometimes I'm more a priest retired than I was in active ministry. The one reason I retired at 65, at that time you were allowed to. Now you had to wait to 70, and some old guys wait till they're 75 to retire, like you.
Right,
but anyway, I retired at 65, so I'm 16, 17 years retired. And then one of the reasons why I retired, because I did a lot of administration, not only like you did as far as personnel director or the pastor or the rector and raising money and all that. That's good and important and necessary, but it can burn you up, burn you out. And so I retired before they didn't let us retire at 65. That's why I retired at 65. I thought they were going to change the rules, which they sort of did. So I'm happy that I retired at 65. But it has given me more time to do to do the priesthood, be an active priest, not being what I have to do. And so I found great freedom in that and great joy in that. And I feel productive. You know, a priest came and asked me, said, sort of two priests, one a big time priest in our diocese, another not, he is a big time person in our diocese, and said, Larry, you are too young, you're too healthy, and you're a good priest. You are selfish because you retired. You ought to get back into active ministry. Two of these priests said this, which I just sort of disagree with them, because I feel like I've still been an active priest since I retired, but it's a new way of life. And I have found it to be delightful and I think productive. And I'm sorry, but I sort of enjoyed every place that I have been in the diocese and in the parishes. There was only one that was a little bit problematic, but I was only there 1 year. And I was working on my master's degree in counseling and guidance at Xavier University in Cincinnati when I was there part-time. But it's not what I wanted to do as a priest. Everything else I have really, in retirement, I really have enjoyed. And I feel good, happy.
Yep.
And not really selfish, the way I've been accused of sometimes. And I can see why they'd say that.
Let me just ask a question, and I don't, you can go on many different levels, but how's prayer different for you as a retired guy as opposed to when you were in, parish?
Well, okay, two reasons, two answers that I have found out that my prayer life has changed positive in retirement, and it has been in the direction of my prayer life is centered around my daily homily preparation. Throughout my ministry, I think one of the greatest things a Vatican do is that you're supposed to give a homily at a public mass. And so that preparing those, what does Jesus say in me in the Old Testament or the gospel reading? And what is God really saying to me? And then how can I share that in a short, practical translation with the people that I preach to? And that has been the basis, really, of my prayer life. And I have gotten into it much, much more since I retired. And that's because of the time. And it's because I then developed this video. I did not a video, but I did a daily Lenten meditation at one time during Lent, and it was a heck of a lot of work. But that too was prayer in presentation, but it was more work than I wanted to do. And some people said, continue that. And I got the idea is I always do a homily. I can video my homily, and it's going to be easier than do this the way I've been putting on the meditations during Lent for every day of Lent. And that's how it started, that I videoed my homily. I prepared more, I prayed more or deeper, and it worked. And it worked for me. I get more benefit out of my homily than a lot of people that get out of my homily. But I get an awful lot of good deals. Can I give you one good deal? This is my classic case. And this is every Friday or Saturday, I put my video on YouTube and Facebook. And one weekend, when the Pope was in Argentina, I got an email from a Lutheran minister thanking me for my homily. And it made my weekend. Can you believe that? In South America, I do a 8-minute homily, and I turned on a Lutheran minister. Isn't that wonderful? Then I thought, well, the Pope had an outdoor mass the last night he left down there on the beach, and 1 million people listened to his homily, and one like mine. And I was angry at the Pope. But I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
We've all got growing to do. Now, who's that up on your left shoulder? There's that question out there about your guardian angel up there on your left shoulder.
That's my right.
No, your left shoulder. There you go.
Oh, this one up here.
You got it.
Oh, okay. No, that's a priest, I think, or a nun, or some loony person. Now, what about my guardian angel?
But they do have a mask on.
Yes, that's right.
Well, we know you've been, developing the books also on the homilies, and also I think the proceeds are going to the Catholic Action Center. So can you speak a little bit about your involvement with the Catholic Action Center and the writing the books?
Well, the bottom line is write a book, and then what are you going to sell it for? And do you need the money, or want to make money, and so forth? And I said, I don't need the book. I'd like to write the book. And my real thinking, and this was even before the book, that I have never really dealt with inner city poor people, either in Appalachia, in the diocese, or the inner city parts, like in Northern Kentucky or in Lexington and so forth. And I always would like to do everything. But I dealt with smart people, intelligent people, wealthy people, big places, and all kinds, and administration. And I thought I always would have liked to have done that, but you can't do everything. You can't do everything. So I thought, well, I've never done anything for street people. So I thought, why not? And the two people that really helped me to start the book, Why not make nothing on the book and give everything, the proceeds from the book, the Catholic Action Center, who primarily is the figurehead, street people, poor people. And that was an agreement of the three of us when we started to put this into on paper. And they were very generous with their time. It was all volunteer, and mine was all volunteer. And, we've given them 45,000 or whatever, as far as, and more, if we ever get the people back to church again in volumes, I'm going to sell some more books. I got 1,000 books I could sell.
Yeah, the pandemic's probably really affected the sales. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it did. It came out in March, when the church is closed.
Yep.
So,
well, you'll have year C coming up, I guess.
Well, I'm waiting to see what happens with the church, because it's pretty much a local book, or it's in a diocesan book or whatever. So, and if I can't sell it, I don't sell it. We give it away, and we expect $15 or more donation to the Catholic Action Center. And well, when we get back to church again in volume, I think I'm going to try to do the same thing, because there's only two places. Your place in Box Christi is the only two places that I know of sold the book.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of money.
One final question, on a given weekend, so are you usually having mass someplace, or do you have a lot of weekends when you don't have any mass scheduled at a parish?
Well, in the last few years, I do at least one mass every weekend. For example, the last 4 months, I was doing 4 masses each weekend. Like when Father Pat got sick, I was doing Saturday night mass 1, 2 on Sunday morning, and then a 4th mass on Monday at noon, which was the Sunday mass for the elderly. And right now I'm back to 1 or more. Just this morning, I have 1 or more now at Box Christi scheduled until July 1. And this morning I talked with Father Richard Watson at St. Paul's. Once a month, I'm going to do 2 masses. They're English masses, one on Saturday afternoon, and then the next morning on Sunday morning at 10, I'm going to do 2 more masses. So if one time a month.
Is that beginning in July?
No, it's beginning in February this month.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'll do 3 masses, 2 down there and 1 at Pax Christi, but all other weekend masses, I'll have 1 mass at Pax Christi. That's the start. And
all
that
right.
goes up to July 1. No, even July. Okay.
Well, I think people would be interested. What's your workout regimen? That you're pretty well preserved. That's an understatement. You're in great health and been through some stuff I know over the years, but still hitting the Y and things like that.
It's because of my new bodily parts. I got 4 screws and 2 plates in my back, and I got 2 new hips that swivel beautifully. and I do. I've always used exercise as a ventilation of tension or whatever. I learned to do that in the seminary. And, seminaries are good for sports too, for that very reason. And so I pretty much carried that through, especially like when I came to Lexington, I played a lot of racquetball, and then I went into running. And right now I'm on the treadmill down at the Y. I'm going there and down the treadmill, and some people joking, they'll say, Father or Larry, turn it up, get going at a good pace. I said, I'm going as fast as I can. But I would say 5-6 days a week, I go down there and work out on the treadmill for 45 or 50 minutes. And if they're closed, like on Sunday, if it's nice, I walk 2.7 miles around here, So, and I eat pretty well, and I drink pretty much. I drink pretty well too. But as far as, and I smoke, So, and I should be dead. My
Well,
mother
I still
died.
think you're a pretty good guy,
My
even though
mother
you
died
don't
at 45.
appreciate
My
what it
dad
is to
died
be good. Tim, if
at
any questions come in or comments we need to bring in at this moment, we're
Just the
almost wrapping
one,
up, I guess.
just one came in from Barbara. She said she remembers she saw Father Hehman when the Pope was in Washington saying Mass on the Mall, and she received communion from Father Larry. So that was
Oh, really?
her memory. Yeah.
Can I tell you one thing about that? I was on that mall giving out communion, and the Pope was there and everything. And some gal, another gal, not the one who went to communion to it, but as far as lunged for the Pope, the Secret Service or whatever they call them, they jumped on her, put their foot on her neck, and this is during communion time. This because of she charged the Pope. I mean,
Wow.
any more questions?
No, that was it.
Uh, okay.
Well, Larry, what are you reading these days that's dynamic for you?
Well, speaking of the Pope, I'm reading the new book of the Pope. You know, and it was just quoted in this week's National Catholic Reporter as far as his new book. What is it called? By Francis. You know, it's in the other room. I can't think of what's the title of it, Paul? You know everything.
I know what I don't know, which is that.
But at any rate, it is really good. I mean, just 2 days ago, I read where he gave 3 of his COVID-19 situations. And one was his sickness, and then he went into 2 others. It's good. It's short, but it's really good. So that's what I'm reading right now. Oh, and then I'm reading another one I really like, and it's only a little bit. It's Thomas Merton. It's every day there's an excerpt out of his journals, and it's only a 1 page. I don't know if you know that book, but it is wild good. And that guy, see, and I used to like quite a few retreats and down to Gethsemane and gone to the Hermitage, and he half of it's, you know, when he's at the Hermitage, and he can say some of the best stuff in 1 page. For the guy took them all out. It's really good. See, it gets me going when I read that. It makes my day. Makes my day.
All righty. Well, Deacon Tim, I wonder if we're just about at the end here.
Yep,
Because,
we are. And
Larry, thank you so much. It's been great, great conversation, and I think it's been revelatory for a lot of our viewers. And thanks for all you've been doing over the years, and thanks for being a good friend to so many of us. It's been great. So thank you.
Well, then I feel privileged that you asked me.
Sure. Well, Tim, can you give us an insight what we got coming up next week?
yeah, we have a lot of people know Miss Mike Allen's going to come and join the conversation next week, and you know he's the director of Office of Marriage and Family Life for the diocese, and I think you're kind of the topic we'll be discussing is around just the whole pandemic and how that's impacted family life and marriage, and Michael just kind of give an idea of how he's been helping facilitate that discussion and some things around the diocese over the past year. So looking forward to that conversation with everybody.
Should be good. All right. Well, again, thanks to everybody who's tuned in, pass the word, and there's ways that if somebody's missed the program, they'll be able to pick it up. So we're just glad you're with us. Have good days, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday. God bless you all.
Have a great